Greetings, class, and welcome to Module 2. So, this past week we had the opportunity to examine foundational ethical theories as well as fundamental ethical principles. Now we are headed into week 2, and we are going to be looking at Chapter 11 in the Healthcare Ethics textbook. Chapter 11 introduces us to healthcare reform, as well as the impact of changes in healthcare delivery on payment, access, and quality of care. Please note that the latest news on healthcare reform will not be found in this textbook. This textbook was published in 2019, which means it's only current to about 2018. So I would encourage you to seek additional information and resources on healthcare reform. We will also look at chapters 1 and chapters 4 in the Health Justice textbook. The topics of focus include discrimination as well as bias. Both discrimination and bias prevent us from achieving the democratic ideas of health equality and justice upon which our nation was founded. My hope is that by the end of this unit, you will leave with a better understanding of both implicit and explicit bias. Unfortunately, implicit bias, we know, is a key mechanism people use to excuse discrimination among various groups, including those in poverty. I would encourage you to think about what are some interventions that can be implemented to decrease implicit bias in the healthcare setting. I would encourage you to think about the no duty to treat principle, as well as the exclusion of poverty from protection under the Constitution, and what those mean to you and the populations you serve. How can we grant poverty special status? How do we do this? We will also take some time to discuss the negative constitutional rights versus the positive constitutional rights in the United States. What are the objections and how do we address these objections? Let's move on to discussing assignment number 1. The purpose of assignment number 1 is to expand your knowledge in the context of healthcare and factors that influence the experience of health. In other words, the social determinants of health. Now, this assignment is foundational to help you achieve the student learning outcomes for this course. This assignment is also the first part. Assignment number 2 will build on assignment number 1. Please do take some time to review the background for this assignment as well as the student learning outcomes. But again, one of the first things that you will want to do for this assignment is to identify a diverse population within your practice or area of interest. So identifying a population. So you will want to identify a population that is unlike yourself. Perhaps someone of a different educational level, perhaps someone of a different um, economic status, socioeconomic status. You will review the literature surrounding the issues involving social determinants of health experienced by this population. You will want to be sure to include 3 references from scholarly peer-reviewed resources published within the last 7 years. I would next ask you to reflect on the culturally and linguistically appropriate services, or rather guidelines in the context of the interview. So in the context of the interview, you want to be sure to reflect on the class guidelines. Now the guidelines are available to you in Module 3. For this interview, you will want to devise at least 4 interview questions with the purpose to gain insight from the interviewee to learn about the diverse population, social determinants of health, social justice issues. These questions should be carefully crafted. We want to avoid leading and inflection of bias and discrimination. The questions themselves will be clearer at the end of this week, but questions may be relative to living conditions. Questions may be relative to food security, transportation, utilities or employment, family and community support, as well as physical activity. We can talk about these questions and what questions you might ask during your interview online. But again, we're asking questions to get to the root of the social determinants of health. And do the problems identified by the population that you are interviewing match what is being seen in the literature? Okay. Now, there are certainly questionnaires that are available to explore and that can help us uncover the social determinants of health and how the social determinants of health are being addressed in this population. And are we meeting the needs of this population? Remember, we can only push health equity forward by addressing social determinants of health. So, in our interview, we want to get to the root of the social determinants of health that may be impacting their health care, their quality of life, etc. And we can certainly, again, talk more about the questions that you might ask online. All right, so I would recommend that as you think about this interview, that you arrange for the interview to take place at a community-based service where the individual receives services. You may decide to conduct the interview at the individual's home if it is safe, at the individual's church, etc. Um, if necessary, the interview may also occur via an online platform such as Zoom. You want to be sure that you obtain permission from the interviewee, that you disclose the purpose of the assignment, and that permission to conduct the interviewee is documented in your paper. Okay. Again, I mentioned this earlier. The purpose of this assignment is to compare and contrast the lived experiences of the interviewee with the findings from the literature search relative to the social determinants of health. You want to reflect on the experiences of the interviewee in the context of diversity and social determinants of health and factors that relate to their health. You want to complete a paper using APA format with the headings that are identified in the rubric. Now, as the assignment guidelines state, this paper will most typically be between 2 and 3 pages. I recommend that the paper be a minimum of 3 pages. In fact, I would not be surprised if this paper leads to maybe 4 or 5 pages. All right. I'm not so certain that this paper and the components could be covered in its entirety in 2 pages, perhaps. But I think more often than not, I see where the paper is 3 to 4 pages and the components are more fully met. Please do pay special attention to the rubric. I would recommend that you put a check next to each component on the rubric as it is addressed in your paper, and that can help in making sure that you have met all the requirements for this paper. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions or concerns. We can talk about the paper online and I can help you troubleshoot any questions or concerns that you have. Please do not hesitate to reach out if I can be of any assistance. Thank you.